This is an MPB Think Radio podcast. To hear previous shows, visit mpbonline.org or download the MPB Public Radio app to listen on your iPhone or Android phone on demand.
From MPB Think Radio, this is Mississippi Education Connection. I'm your host, Michelle McAdoo, along with my co-host, Tara Wren, Director of Education here at MPB. Well, children will return to school campuses throughout Mississippi this fall, but learning may look a little different. State Superintendent of Education Dr. Carey Wright joins us again this morning to talk about reopening options for districts, health and safety guidelines, digital learning, and more. Now, phone lines are open, and we'd love for you to join our conversation with your questions and comments. The number to call is 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. Well, good morning, Tara.
Good morning, Michelle. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. It's a little cooler today with the overcast from Hurricane. What's her name? Do you know the name of the hurricane? Java.
I don't know it yet.
I know. She said it this morning. They said it this morning. It surpasses me now. But I'm not saying we are welcoming a hurricane, but it does make for a nice overcast and a little windy. I stood outside a little bit this morning, just enjoyed the wind coming in my face walking in the building. How are you this morning?
Enjoying the breeze.
I know.
So,
Enjoying the breeze as well. Well, speaking of breezes and, oh my goodness, it's about to be fall. I mean, believe it or not, summer just flew by and it is about to be fall, and we are upon school openings, and a lot of people around the world are deciding what to do about students returning to school. And we have Dr. Carey Wright, our State Superintendent of Education, to help us navigate through all of this and talk about reopening plans and how they came up with their 3 options for districts, as well as health and safety guidelines and her digital learning plan, which I can't wait to hear a lot more about. But before I know. But before we get into that, Tara, let's tell us what's been going on in the education department this week.
Well, I guess the 2 key things that we're doing this week is we have had several meetings with MDE, and because we're looking to do the same thing that we did at the end of last year at MPB, is to support MDE and our school districts across the state with support their curriculum online and perhaps with MPB television, and we're just trying to work out the best way to do that. So we're in communication and planning and talking about that. So that's a key thing that we'll be talking more about later on down the road that we're going to be doing. The other thing that we're working on or that's in motion is our Parents, Our Teachers Too initiative, which we talked about on the show here. Of course, it's our initiative. We call it PAT. And it is a parent-focused initiative which focuses on empowering and encouraging families just to learn together. Parents get together in a 6 sessions with a facilitator to discuss, hot topics, key topics of importance to the parents and their families. And they learn tips, strategies, and best practices on how to work with their children at home. And, we say parents are their children's first and most important teacher. And right now, this is just a great initiative for us to have going where we can work with parents and encourage them and hear from them most of all and try to give them the best tools and resources to work within their families on lessons and supporting their children. So PAT is underway, and, we're signing families up across the state. And for more information, people can go to education.mpbonline.org to get our contact information within the state.
Oh, wow. And, Pat, like you mentioned earlier, Pat, we did have a whole show about your program and how important it is, and especially Dr. Wright will attest to this when she gets on, about the style of learning that students will be doing this school year, either traditional, hybrid, or completely online. And parents are going to need as much support as possible to deal with I think all areas of learning, we as parents need help, but especially distance learning and hybrid, because this is new for everyone.
Yes, and the parent involvement piece is going to help the student. And, once parents get more comfortable with the instruction piece at home, not just doing the homework and follow up. It'll help build the family unit as well and help the student to do better. So it's just a support. I look at it also as a support system, for parents to reach out and build networks with other folks within their communities that they didn't know in the beginning. And so this is just a great time for us to be doing PAT, and we hope parents will join us in our sessions.
That's great. And tell them again what website they can go to learn more about PAT and other programs in the education department.
Education.mpbonline.org.
All right. Well, thank you, Tara. Always something good and new in the education department. Now, speaking of education, of course, back to school is near and dear. And the main question on everyone's mind is how to keep our community safe while making sure every child has access to tools they need to succeed. Well, State Superintendent of Education Dr. Carey Wright joins us this morning to talk about that effort. Dr. Wright, we're very pleased to have you joining us again this morning. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
All right. Thank you so much again. And I want to say personally, but thank you for being a partnership in Mississippi Education Connection on this new show we've dedicated during the COVID-19 pandemic. You guys have been a great asset to this show. Thank you so much.
Oh, happy to be your partner with you.
All right. Well, we're going to, of course, jump right on in here, Dr. Wright. During the 2019-2020 school year, of course, when school buildings closed because of the pandemic, your department surveyed school districts on how they were delivering instruction. Can you tell us the results of that survey?
Well, they're actually the surveys are due on the 31st. We obviously got a number of them turned in already, but the majority of our districts are offering a hybrid model of virtual and in-person. I think that there are some districts I know that are offering only virtual or only in-person, but I think the majority of them are trying to offer both.
Right, because I've been talking to a few parents that's been in different districts that are saying some of the things that they are offering is not helping their families, and that's unfortunate. I do like the traditional hybrid or in-person option that gives you a roundabout option for your family. But like you said, some districts are only offering two options, and again, that is up to the districts, correct?
That is correct. Each district was allowed to choose the option that they felt were best for their communities. And I know that a lot of superintendents surveyed their communities to kind of get a feel for what that would be like. And this is kind of fluid because districts are still kind of changing what they're doing literally up until the last minute. I'm sure you're aware that Madison has made a decision to delay school start until September the 3rd, and that was really not their original plan. So right. I think the superintendents are still trying to figure this out as we go, particularly since our numbers continue to climb.
Right. Well, let's go back a little bit to March 2020. Sure. Can you tell us one of the biggest lessons you learned when preparing to reopen schools this fall?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we've realized is the digital divide is real, and there are a lot of children that do not have connectivity to the internet, and a lot of children that just don't have a device. So we have jumped on the offensive, and I've got to really give a hats off to our legislature for funding this. We have a huge digital learning plan that we've put together. Senate Bill 3044 and House Bill 1788 provided monies for us to be able to purchase a device basically for every single child in the district or in the state. And also, where those devices will be cellular and Wi-Fi enabled. So if you are able to reach, a cell tower, you'll have connectivity. And I think most everybody in the state has a cell phone, so I think that's a good thing. We are going to be looking at where we might need to provide hotspots as well, and also learning management systems. And those are platforms that teachers can load their content onto, then students can download that content onto their devices, and then we'll be able to have that at home in order to learn. That's probably been the biggest takeaway, is the fact that we had so many children that were not able to have a device at home and made learning difficult. I think those districts did their best. I think a lot of districts that knew that was happening prepared packets, and some of those districts may have to start the year with packets. We have been negotiating with all the vendors recently, and we're trying, obviously, to get the cost down as much as we can. And then the board, we've called a special call board meeting on August the 6th for the board to approve these contracts so that we can issue those to vendors and start getting the devices in students' hands.
Wow, that's a lot. We actually wanted to dive deeper into your distance learning plan later in the show. Sure. But right now, let's go to the phone lines. We actually have 2 calls on the line. Let's go to Biloxi, sure, Mississippi, and speak with Socia. Did I say your name right? Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I'm
morning.
calling with, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm calling with 2 particular concerns regarding all of this return to school. We've heard a lot of different news and briefings from the governor, but from what I'm gathering, he feels that it is more beneficial to send kids back to school than it is to keep them out of school. And while I can't say that I don't disagree with that, I feel like some of his verbiage has been to the point of, as a parent or a teacher, what's the number of deaths that the Department of Education and the governor are willing to accept as collateral damage for opening up schools traditionally? Because that's a major concern as both, educators and parents with that. And then I have another question after that one.
Sure. Well, I don't know if you're aware, but the National Association of Pediatricians, as well as your local Mississippi chapter of pediatricians, believe that returning to school in person is actually the best thing to do, obviously with safety precautions. The Department of Education and the State Board of Education do not have the authority to dictate to districts their start date, or whether it's in person or whether it's virtual. That the only one that the governor has the authority to issue an executive order if he wanted to push the start date back, but the State Board and the Department of Ed do not. And so we're following the medical guidelines, CDC's guidelines for reopening. That has been given to all of the superintendents as well. So you've got the medical professionals recommending it. I think some superintendents are making decisions based on the input that they're receiving from their communities.
Well, I'm also a trained epidemiologist, and while people are very quick to call out certain publications that say that children are not as likely to get the disease and not likely to get it and spread it as much as adults, there has been some recent publications within the last week that have shown that middle school, specifically ages 7th through 12th grade, are almost as able to spread the virus as adults. Plus, we've also seen the growing of cases in Mississippi between the ages of 18 and 29. My agreement with you is that, yes, that traditional schooling is the best option for our children. But from my personal experience as both an educator in the state and a parent, is that school districts are not architecturally nor resource eligible or able to provide adequate social distancing. We have old school districts. I've worked in buildings that do not have windows or doors that are able to be opened. So while I agree that we need to open schools and we need to do it safely, I do believe at this point it's quite difficult for many of us to do that. So why is there such a pushback to not delaying school until, or even a hybrid model, till we can see how the virus is going to play out for the next couple of weeks? That was my second question.
Yeah, and that option is open to every district. I mean, every district has the ability to do exactly what you're asking. And so if it's something and we've been telling parents and those that have emailed and called that this is really something that you need to be addressing with your local board and your local superintendent, because they have the ability to do exactly what you just said. And so that's why I'm saying a lot of superintendents have surveyed the communities, and then based on the information that they're getting from their parents, made decisions accordingly. And I think you've got superintendents out there, I know you do, that are out there trying to develop their schedules so that they do have social distancing once the children are in school. So the best thing I would recommend that you do is to really reach out to your local board and your local superintendent.
Well, thank you so much, Socia from Biloxi. Great questions. Terry, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question to this, and maybe a little later I'll ask about tablets that Dr. Wright you were talking about. But to what you just said, I just kind of want to, a lot of people are saying, they have these issues and concerns. And so I just want to reiterate and you to verify what the main thing is going to the local school boards, that the Department of Education has no authority. Is that what I'm hearing you say, to tell schools when to open, and how to open? Is that just
that's exactly correct. Every year, each school district has the ability to set its own calendar. The requirement from the department is 180 days, which is still in play. We did waive the 330 minutes per day because we knew a lot of districts were going to be virtual. And so it's a minimum of 240 minutes per day. But a district can start whenever it wants to start. As I mentioned earlier, Madison had an earlier start date. I believe I want to say it was the second week in August. And they have just changed and decided not to open until September the 3rd. But that was a local school board and a local superintendent's decision. So any parents that have concerns, that's really where they need to start. The State Department does not have the authority to dictate calendar.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Wright, for clearing that up. A lot of people do have questions and really wondering why the Department of Education doesn't take the lead on certain decisions. But you just cleared that up. Thank you so much for that. We're going to take our first break, and when we return, we'll continue our conversation with State Superintendent of Education, Dr. Carey Wright. Now, if you have a question or comment for the show, now's the time to call. You can join the conversation by calling 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. Stay tuned. When we get back, we'll go to Shelley in Vicksburg and John holding patiently in Jackson. And if you want to be a part of the show, give us a call, 1-877-672-7464. This is Mississippi Education Connection on MPB Think Radio.
Hi, I'm Dr. Susan Buttress, Professor of Pediatrics at the University of Mississippi Medical Center and host of Southern Remedies, Relatively Speaking. Join us as we explore issues that relate to you and your family, from mental health obstacles and family interactions to handling life's disruptions. Whatever the issue, let's try to figure it out together. You can listen live Tuesdays at 11 on MPB Think Radio, or you can subscribe to the podcast by searching for Southern Remedy on your preferred podcasting app.
This is an MPB Think Radio podcast.
Good morning. You're listening to Mississippi Education Connection on MPB Think Radio. I'm your host, Michelle McAdoo, along with my co-host, Tiara Wren, Director of Education here at MPB. Well, today we're discussing Mississippi students heading back to school with our guest, State Superintendent of Education, Dr. Carey Wright. Now, if you have questions or comments for Dr. Wright, give us a call at 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. Now, Dr. Wright, we're going to take a couple of more calls, and after that, I would like to dive deep into the reopening Mississippi schools document, and let's talk about the 9-member subcommittee you guys created, and how you came up with the 3 choices, and who was on the committee, if you like.
Sure.
Okay, good deal. Well, let's go to Shelley in Vicksburg. Good morning, Shelley. Thanks for calling the show.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Wright and all of our leaders during this very hard time. It has to be very difficult navigating waters that we've never been in before. So I have a couple of questions. One is about testing. And so I have a child who is a junior in high school, and he will be required to take state testing this year. As we know, face-to-face learning in person is the best. But obviously, for many reasons, a lot of parents wish to keep their children at home. Is there any way state testing will not be done this year so that children who do choose to distance learn to learn at home, can take that test later on when they have better instruction? So that's my first question. My second question is, have schools been given their MAEP money for July that was vetoed by Reeves and promised to be paid through the Department of Finance and Administration?
So we are working with DFA. That's not going to be a problem. The monies are going to be appropriated to the districts as needed for MAEP, and that's been an ongoing thing since the governor did veto the bill. I do believe that is going to be on the agenda, obviously, for the special call session, but the districts will not miss a beat as far as MAEP is concerned. And as far as your first question was around keeping children at home, was that your first question?
Well, it was about the fact that Mississippi hasn't applied for the state testing waiver or the federal testing waiver, and we are having state testing waivers. And so while virtual learning obviously is something we need to have right now, we know that that's not the best option for education, but it is the best option to keep children and teachers safe. And so is there any way that you see those testing restrictions being lifted?
Well, the Department of Education in D.C. has made it very clear that they're not entertaining any waivers at this time to do state testing. And so since it's just July, I think we need to get into the school year and see exactly what the situation is going to be, because I would not want to preclude us from testing if we have the ability to test, because this would have made 2 years in a row that we really don't know the state of education, and the status of all of our children around the state. And that's my biggest concern. Whether or not it's decoupled from accountability is another discussion as well. Whether the tests are administered, we get a sense of where children are, and then decouple that from accountability. But those are conversations that we're going to continue to have with the superintendents and with the state board. And it doesn't preclude us from filing a waiver later on. But at this point, I think we're going to just continue as we normally would to plan to administer those tests in the spring.
Well, thank you, Shelley, for those great questions. Dr. Wright, you mentioned a few things we're going to talk about later in the show. Your GLR webinar, Maintaining Momentum in Mississippi. We're going to talk about that a little bit, and I know you can go more into detail on how to keep that momentum going that we were on without testing or throughout the pandemic, and you can talk about some key points you made in the webinar as well. I heard it was great, by the way.
Thank you. I think it went really well. We got a lot of positive feedback on it.
That's great. That's great. Let's double back a little bit and talk about the 9-member subcommittee you guys put together to actually create the Reopening Mississippi Schools document. Can you give us the names of the 9 superintendents you chose, why you chose those 9 members, and who else was on the committee?
So we had Todd English from Boonville, Jason Harris from Columbia, Adrian Hammett from Jefferson County, Tess Smith from Lamar, Charlotte Steele from Madison, Lance Evans from New Albany, Benita Coleman from Ocean Springs, Matt Dillon from Petal, and Niskia Davis from Sunflower. And they were chosen because they represent all areas of the state. They represent small and large. They represent all different communities around the state. So we wanted to make sure that all voices were heard when we were developing the document. Benita Coleman chaired this committee, and they divided into several subcommittees and then developed guidance in 3-month increments. So they're going to continue to work. They developed guidance for June, July, and August. And then they're going to come back together again and produce one for September, October, November, that kind of thing. And they address areas like academic programming, operations, family and community support, communications, health and safety, and technology in our learning management systems. And anyone can find this document right on our landing page at MDE.
All right. Now, were there medical doctors on the committee as well?
We've been working with Dr. Dobbs and Dr. Byers. Dr. Dobbs, is our state health officer. Dr. Byers is the state epidemiologist. And so we have been working hand in hand with them throughout this. And Dr. Dobbs did meet with this group to provide them some information. Dr. Dobbs has also been on a virtual meeting with all superintendents around the state and has provided them with decision-making matrix, lots of information from his department and lots of information from CDC. So the superintendents were well informed about the health and safety aspect when they wrote this.
All right. And now, of course, we mentioned this earlier, but the 3 options, of course, on the document were traditional reopening, a hybrid reopening, and a virtual reopening. And again, you, of course, let the districts decide which styles. And when I say styles, I put an S on that because a lot of districts are letting the parents choose 3 options. And I love that.
Mm-hmm. And every district could do what they, like I said, try to meet the needs of their own communities. And I think that is really the best thing, is that letting local districts decide, because every community is different, and some, are hot spots and some are not. And so I think everybody had to feel comfortable with the decisions that they made.
Right. Now they have to load their decision on their website by July 31st. Do you know about how many districts have decided as of today?
No, I do not. We are, like I said, we're in the process of collecting all of that. The plans had to be approved by the local boards, and they had to be posted on every local district's website. So those districts that have already gotten theirs approved are probably up and running, but we will have all of those in by the 31st, and then we will, compile all of that so that that can be a document that everybody sees.
Dr. Wright, I want in the document. Here's a key question that I keep getting is it addressed about when people, students return to school, or if they're going to choosing a traditional route, will COVID testing be required of teachers, students, and how does that look for a student's household? That whole category of questioning right there keeps coming up. Can you address that for us?
Well, I think a lot of the districts, if not all of the districts, I think are going to be taking temperatures, as children and staff are coming in the building. I've heard from a number of superintendents that they're also going to severely limit the number of visitors in the building, so as to limit the number of adults that that come in to just those that need to come in. I've not heard any of the, and nor have I really heard Dr. Dobbs recommending that, to be honest with you, that they do any of the testing. I think that's something that the health department really, and or your local physician would do, but I've not heard him at all mention anything around schools administering their own testing.
Well, Dr. Wright, has the Department of Education come up with a statewide plan to, even out the districts when it comes to taking temperatures, either before they walk in school or before they get on the bus? And if a child's temperature is over 100.4, what do they do next? Do they go into school or do they have to go home?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, we on this may be on our website as well. We just gave them that document because the Department of Health updated their guidance, and we put that out I want to say Tuesday of this week,
okay,
to all the superintendents around, if this, then this. That's exactly what you're asking. And that's in that document as well. And I believe that is also posted on our COVID-19 page on our website.
Oh, right. So there is a uniformed plan. And that's what a lot of people were saying. Is there a uniform plan? So this district won't be doing this and this school district won't be doing that. And it's kind of chaotic.
Well, if they're following the guidance that the Department of Health has given us, that we have given them, then the answer to that question is yes. Because that's one of the reasons that we have been in constant contact with Dr. Dobbs and Dr. Byers, so that we're making sure that our superintendents have the most up-to-date information regarding the health and safety of children and staff. So that's one of the reasons that as soon as we get anything from them, we put out an update. We were putting out a daily update, and we've gone to a twice-a-week update to all superintendents, principals, and teachers throughout the state.
All right. Well, we're going to take another quick break, and when we return, we'll go to Jackson and speak with George. He has a question for you, Dr. Wright. And if you have a question, you can, of course, join our conversation at 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. Stay tuned. This is Mississippi Education Connection on MPB Think Radio.
Hey, this is Larry Morrissey with the Mississippi Arts Commission. I'm one of the hosts of the Mississippi Arts Hour, the arts interview show on Think Radio. We talk with visual artists, musicians, writers, as well as people who help bring the arts to their communities. We hear about how each artist learned their craft and get some insight into their creative process. You can hear the Arts Hour every Sunday at 5 p.m. on Think Radio, or listen anytime by subscribing to the show through your favorite podcasting app.
This is an MPB Think Radio podcast.
Thanks for listening to MPB Think Radio, inside Mississippi Education Connection. I'm your host, Michelle McAdoo, along with my co-host, Tara Wren, Director of Education here at MPB. Well, if you're just joining us today, we're discussing the reopening of Mississippi public schools with our guest, State Superintendent of Education, Dr. Carey Wright. Now, if you have a question or comment for Dr. Wright, give us a call at 1-877-672-7464. Well, Dr. Wright, thank you for being so gracious and answering all of the callers' questions and answering our questions as well. We love having you on the show.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to go to Jackson and speak with George. Good morning, George.
Good morning to you all. Thank you all for taking my call.
All right. Thank you for calling and listening. You have a question or comment for the show?
I do, yes. I'm the father of a son who was diagnosed with autism. He's nonverbal autistic. And so because of his diagnosis, we have to keep him home because he's unable to meet the requirements as regards to the social distancing as well as the mask wearing requirements. So we'll be keeping him home. So my question is, what's the plan in place for making sure that those students like that are receiving an equitable education? And what's the process in place if we feel that he or she is not, in fact, receiving an equitable education?
That's a really good question that you brought up. And we've had a lot of concerns expressed about our students with disabilities. And so I would expect that your local school will work directly with you as a parent of a child who cannot come back to school to design a plan so that learning continues. That's the expectation. So I would, if you are not receiving that kind of service from your school, first I would contact the principal to see what the design for your child's education is going to be, how often, how frequently, what is it? Is it going to be a paper pencil? Is it going to be something along with the computer? The devices will be there. And if you don't receive a satisfactory answer, then I would suggest that you contact the local superintendent. Because Dr. Eric Green, I know well, and I am sure that he, along with everybody else, is concerned about children that aren't able to return to school. So you should expect, every parent should expect to have a learning plan for his or her child that meets the needs of those children and meets the needs of their IEP.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, George. Great question. We were actually going to talk about that as well, Dr. Wright. But I have a question about accountability. How will how will your department hold the districts accountable for following the guidelines in place?
Well, I think that's one of the things that we'll probably have to double check and audit on occasion, I would imagine, depending on the situation around safety. But I've got confidence that our superintendents and our principals and our teachers are going to carry through with this. This caught everybody off guard in March, no doubt. But we've had time now to regroup. We've been providing professional development virtually around the use of technology, et cetera. And that's going to continue into the fall. So I've talked to teachers. I was on a call with all of my teachers advisory committee, and they're saying, boy, the first thing that they're going to do when they return is make sure that they know how to set up a classroom virtually, that their children know how to get on a Zoom call, et cetera. We've also given guidance on how to take attendance because we're concerned that we want to make sure that every child is accounted for and every child is learning. And so we passed an attendance policy that allows districts and tells districts how to collect attendance even if it's done virtually, because we don't want any children falling through the cracks on this when we do reopen school.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Let's go back and talk about your CARES funding. I know you guys put out, your team composed an allocation plan. Can you break down that plan for us?
Yes. So the districts, the federal government gave different pots of money to the states. The bigger dollars, if you're talking about the $1.25 billion in stabilization funds, that came directly to the state under the legislature and the governor's authority. They also then gave money to each state department to pass on to the local districts. We had $169.9 million that came into the state, and there's a 10% set aside for the department, and we intend to use our monies to help districts that may need more assistance than others. The rest of that money flowed straight through to the districts, and it was based on the Title I formula that is used to distribute Title I dollars in the 1920 school year. So every district will have the ability to utilize those funds, and those are really just flow-through funds right to the district. The governor also received a pot of money, about $34.6 million under his discretion, to be able to address any COVID-related issues or how COVID had impacted the state. So those are monies that are there as well. With the stabilization money, though, with Senate Bill 3044, there was about $130 million set aside for devices and anything related to digital learning, and then $20 million for the State Department's discretion to help districts that may need more assistance. And then House Bill 1788 was one that provided $50 million to address connectivity. So it's those monies that we are now getting ready to distribute it's a reimbursable. The districts are going to have to send in their invoices and then get reimbursed for that. But we have, we've got a webinar today for an hour and a half with all superintendents across the state to talk about the distribution of those dollars. And that's in addition to the money that I was just describing that's already going out to them through the CARES Act. This is the stabilization money that was put in Senate Bill 3044 and House Bill 1788. So they will have access to those funds as well.
All right.
So, Dr. Wright, let me ask you, those CARES funds and the other funds, and you talked earlier about can you talk a little bit about how that distribution will happen, and will every student actually get a tablet in their hand, or is this every family, or specifically every student? Can you just lay that out for us so we can listeners can understand how that is to take place?
Sure. So we developed the digital learning plan and worked with the legislature to get the plan funded. And the plan will, in essence, it may not be, each district was allowed to ask for the type of platform that they wanted, whether they wanted a Chromebook or whether they wanted an iPad, et cetera. So we took all of that information and then devised the plan so that every child will end up with a device of the kind that the district has asked for. We also asked districts, how many of you need a learning management system? Because some districts did not have that. So the districts were able to fill out a needs assessment and send that into us. And we used all of that data to design our plan and then work with the legislature to get the funds appropriated for that. So those funds are coming from the stabilization money. That is the $1.25 billion that came into the state. The Senate bill and the House bill are using those dollars. That's in addition to the CARES Act money that came through to the state, to the districts as well. The main difference is that the stabilization money is on a reimbursable. So districts are going to have to put their money out first and then get reimbursed for that. But the webinar that we're having today is going to walk the superintendents exactly through that process so that they know what buckets of money, so that they know what they can spend it on, because it's very prescriptive. It's not just here's the money, go do something with it. It's very prescriptive around what they can and cannot use it for.
All right. I love that. And that webinar is for superintendents all over the state today?
Yes, ma'am. Superintendents, they're probably going to have their business managers on the phone, I would imagine. And that's going to be from 1:30 to 3 today.
All right. We have another caller from Jackson. Michelle is on the line. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
Thanks for calling the show. You have a question or comment for Dr. Wright?
Well, it's a question and a comment at the same time. I'm a parent, and I do very much agree with on-site learning, But in my position, I have a son, and he has a 504 plan because he has a medical condition. And with that being said, he will not be able to be around or just take the chance and the risk of being around anybody else because his immune system is very, very low. So I have a job, and I'm working full-time, but with that being, with that being my only option, I have no choice but to do virtual learning for him. But it puts me in a position where, now I have to quit working so I can be at home with him so that I can make sure he's learning. And I was just wondering, have they thought about anything for, us parents who have no other choice if your kids have a medical condition and we have no other choice but to do virtual learning? Because that was going to stop my income.
That's a really tough question, and I wish I had a good answer for you because you're certainly not the only parent that's in this position. Right. I would hope that the school could work with you somehow to assist with the virtual part of it, no doubt. But I wish I had a good answer for the parents that have to return to work full time, and the only option for their children is virtual learning. But unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah, because I understand it happened, and don't nobody know what to do. But it is a lot of parents that have kids with medical condition, and it's like, what do we do? I don't even know what to do. I have to tell my boss, that when school starts, that I'll have to put my 2 weeks notice in, because I do have to teach my son. And I have another kid in school, but I made the choice to let him do virtual because I didn't want one going and he's sad and, he might bring something back. So I just said both stay,
Do you have family or a neighbor that is going to be in the same position that your child may be able to work with?
I'm looking now. I'm looking for, but most of my family, honestly, they work. A lot of people, they work. I don't just know nobody right off. A lot of people in my community are doing virtual learning just by their own choice. I just don't know now. I'm really searching and looking for any people that might say, hey, we might take a couple kids and, allow them to, get together and do their work online. But I hadn't found anybody yet to, kind of come up with that type of organization. It'll help a lot of parents out a lot.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, good luck to you. I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you.
Thank you, Michelle. Dr. Wright, she brought up a lot of great points. We were talking about this off air, but this is a great opportunity for any retired teachers or anyone any educators that are not going back in the classroom to see if they can get together and help those parents who really need to be at a job, but their students cannot be back in the classroom face to face. This is that golden opportunity to maybe put together some programs that can help teach students at home, so they won't.
That's a really good suggestion, actually. That's a really good suggestion.
All right.
And Michelle, I'll dive in here and say that, hey, if there are any teachers, any parents, for anyone who's trained and working with children who is willing to do that and to start these types of groups in your communities, send us an email at education@mpbonline.org. And we will compile a list, and we will try to communicate this to everyone and try to put that out there. So why don't you do that? Take that down, education@mpbonline.org. Send us an email if you are willing to start a group within your community, because apparently that is a great need. We'll be willing to, spearhead that and make sure we get that information out.
That's a great suggestion. That's a great public service that you're doing. That's perfect.
All right. Well, we do have another call, but before we get to that call, Dr. Wright, I don't want to run out of time before you talk about your suspensions of some policies that you guys did for the upcoming year. I know you talked about you changed the hours of instructional hours per day and some other things. Can we talk about that just for a little bit?
Sure. So we passed some of the waivers last year, but then we had to come back and redo because we knew this was we do obviously expect to be in the same situation, I think, in the fall. But we waived the number of hours. We have waived the seat time. So typically I think it's 140 hours, for a Carnegie unit in high school. So we've asked the district then to design how they're going to ensure the mastery of content in order to earn a Carnegie unit. We also waived overall the professional growth system for teachers and administrators because we felt it would be very difficult to really evaluate teachers and administrators when sometimes you're in school and sometimes you're not. All those waivers are also on our website. And we put all that, anything that you want to know that's COVID related is right on our landing page. So we've got a lot of information up there, and that's where I would suggest that you go to get all of these details. Some of them are just really more school specific than not. We had different things around school lunches. Typically it's an offer versus serve, and so we've done away with that so that if children are driving by and picking up lunches, try to make that easier. We've really tried to look at the waivers that we knew that might give districts and schools more flexibility, and that's really where we started.
All right. And again, before we go to Sarah, can you talk about your Maintaining Momentum in Mississippi webinar and just a few key points that you talked about in that webinar and how to keep Mississippi on track during this pandemic?
Well, it was a wonderful opportunity. The Campaign for Grade Level Reading, I can't say enough about the organization and their director, Ralph Smith, who's just done tremendous work around the nation. And we've got some Campaign for Grade Level Reading, communities here in Mississippi too. But they asked me to come in because we have just catapulted to up the ladder over the past few years, and Mississippi has really gained such national recognition because of the hard work of our teachers and administrators. And it was really just an opportunity to share, where we were and where we are. This past year, Quality Counts ranked Mississippi as one of the 5 most improved states in the nation. We've gotten the national recognition for our progress on the National Assessment of Educational Progress, our NAEP scores in grades 4 and 8, and our high school graduation rate's the highest it's ever been at 85%. And we talked about our early learning collaboratives and how our preschool students that are in our collaboratives are coming in already ready for kindergarten, outpacing, all other pre-K kids. So it was just an opportunity to really let the nation know how hard we've worked. We've talked about advanced placement. We did our advanced placement scores, and the number of children even taking advanced placement has more than doubled since 2013, and as are the number of kids. And our pass rate has not even dropped by even doubling the number of kids taking advanced placement. So it's proof positive about what is happening in Mississippi. You know, our poor students on our NAEP assessment outperformed all their peers around the nation in fourth grade, and that is huge. So our children in poverty, our children of color, I mean, every area of the state was showing improvement. And I think that's what's been so hard for us in education with this shutdown, because it's critical now that we start the year strong. I've advised teachers that I was asked, you know, do I pick up with the third or the fourth quarter standards and start that in the fall? And I said, no, absolutely not. Start with the current grade level standards and teach from there. Our goal is to accelerate learning. Remediation does not work. There's too much research out there that says that. Start with grade level standards and accelerate from there. We've got to just take this bull by the horns. It's not what any of us want to be doing right now, but it's what we've got to be doing for the children of the state.
I love that. And of course, last question for the hour. Of course, a lot of administrators around the country are in your position right now. And again, we want to say thank you and your team for doing the best that you can, stepping up to the plate, coming up with the 3 guidelines for the districts. And again, a lot of people have their own opinions about what you should be doing. I'm sure you get that from all sides, but you have to stay focused. What are you doing to handle all of the pressure, and what advice would you give other state leaders?
Well, we're on calls twice a week. The state chiefs are. So we get a lot of opportunity to share what each of us, you know, is addressing, and to share resources with each other and ideas with each other. And that has been very helpful. The Council of Chief State School Officers is the organization that all of us belong to, and they have really been forthcoming in providing a lot of resources to state chiefs, who then can pass that on to the districts, and that we have done as well. But I think it's staying on top of it. I mean, you can't let down a minute. I mean, it's 7 days a week. It's not your Monday through Friday job, that's for sure. And I think just making sure that we are on top of the situation for the safety and health of our children, as well as the education of our children. And that's the reason we felt so strongly about putting together this digital plan that the legislature was kind enough for us to fund. You know, once we get all this in place, I don't think there's another state in the nation, to be honest with you, that's doing what we're doing right now. We're really where this digital plan is concerned, and it's amazing, and our legislature deserves a lot of credit.
All right. Well, Dr. Wright, State Superintendent of Education, thank you, and we appreciate your time today. Well, we've come to the end of another great show. We want to thank our listeners and, of course, thank our guest again, State Superintendent of Education, Dr. Carey Wright, for joining us today. Mississippi Education Connection is a production of Mississippi Public Broadcasting Think Radio in conjunction with MPB's Educational Services and Mississippi Department of Education. For Tara Wren, I'm